Hey everyone, welcome back, or welcome for the first time. Today we're diving into the lives of 10 gay male artists who aren't just topping charts, they're tearing down walls. You might know their names, but their stories? They'll surprise you. Hit that subscribe button, drop a comment below, and let's get into it. Steve Grand. He didn't walk into the industry with an entourage or a record deal. He came in with a story so raw, so real, that it broke through the noise without needing approval. Steve Grand's rise began with a single song, All American Boy. But the impact it had was anything but singular. It was a moment when someone finally said out loud what so many had only dared to whisper. In just a few minutes of heartfelt lyrics and a homemade video, Steve made space in a genre that had never offered it to someone like him. Growing up in a conservative Midwestern household, Steve had been taught to fear his truth. Every note he plays now is a rebellion against that silence. He writes not from a place of polished performance, but from bruises earned through personal battles. Against shame, against rejection, against the quiet ache of invisibility. And yet, through the pain, his voice rises strong and steady. There's something deeply moving in how he crafts his music, not just to entertain, but to heal. Not just for himself, but for those who never believed they could be part of the story. He's more than just a singer. Steve became a symbol of self-ownership. His toned physique and confident presence made him a fixture in queer media, but what truly captured hearts was his vulnerability. Whether he's performing on Pride stages or opening up about his struggles with faith and mental health, Steve doesn't flinch from the hard stuff. He meets it head on, with a melody in his chest and a message in his eyes. You're not alone. Then came Grand Axis, his fashion line built not to shock, but to affirm. It celebrates the freedom to feel good in your skin, to be bold, to be seen. And that's always been his mission, to turn fear into expression, doubt into dialogue. Steve Grand didn't just break into the spotlight, he brought light with him. And for every person still trapped in silence, his music offers a hand, an anthem, and the promise that truth, when sung loud enough, can set you free. Omar Apollo. There's something about the way he sings that feels like a secret being whispered through a wall. Not because he's hiding, because he's daring you to lean in closer. Omar Apollo never asked for permission to be different. He simply was. Born to immigrant parents in a small town in Indiana, he grew up surrounded by tradition, expectations, and silence. But even as a kid, Omar carried music in his bones. With a borrowed guitar and a head full of melodies, he started recording in his bedroom, turning pain into poetry long before the world was ready to listen. He didn't fit the mold, and he never tried to. His songs blurred genres the way his identity blurred boundaries. A little bit R&B, a little bit soul, a little bit funk, and a whole lot of vulnerability. But it wasn't just his sound that made people pause, it was his words. He didn't mask his feelings in metaphors or neutral pronouns. He said it plainly, a boy loving another boy. The yearning, the confusion, the aching honesty of it all. And in doing so, he didn't just tell his story, he told thousands of others that theirs mattered too. Fame didn't rush in with fireworks. It crept in through SoundCloud streams and Instagram DMs. It built slowly, layer by layer like his songs. Every chord, every falsetto note, every lyric written at 2 a.m. became a brick in a house he built by hand. And now, as he stands on festival stages and earns Grammy nods, Omar carries with him not just the weight of representation, but the grace of someone who knows exactly where he came from. He still talks about his mom's cooking, still laughs like a kid who made it out of nowhere, and still writes as if he's telling the truth for the very first time. In a world that often demands boxes, labels, and explanations, Omar Apollo chooses fluidity. Not to confuse, but to free. Because he knows the real magic isn't in being understood by everyone. It's in being fully, unapologetically yourself, and letting that be enough. Jaymes Vaughan. He never needed a spotlight to shine. With a voice like velvet and a presence that radiates warmth, Jaymes Vaughan built his legacy not with flash, but with quiet, unwavering authenticity. Long before the cameras found him, he was already working. Singing in small venues, hosting local shows, telling stories that mattered, even if the world hadn't caught up yet. And when the world finally did notice, Jaymes didn't become someone else to fit the frame. He widened the lens so others like him could be seen too. His journey wasn't scripted for headlines. It was carved from determination, long nights, and the kind of resilience you only earn when you've been told no one too many times. But Jaymes turned rejection into redirection. Whether he was performing with a boy band on tour buses or hosting celebrity interviews on national television, he never left his truth at the door. He carried it with him, gracefully, confidently, unapologetically. Because for him, being out wasn't a career strategy, it was a life choice, one that meant risking roles, opportunities, and approval, but never losing himself. And then came the love story, the proposal that went viral, the wedding that made history. But behind every viral moment is a man who spent years paving the way, not just for love, but for visibility. Jaymes used every platform he touched to lift others. From co-creating inclusive travel experiences for LGBTQ+ communities to speaking candidly about the pressures of being perfect in the public eye, he gave people something far more valuable than entertainment. He gave them connection. He's not loud. He doesn't need to be. His power comes from presence, from showing up day after day as a man rooted in purpose. A man who understands that true influence isn't about being followed, it's about being trusted. And in an industry built on illusion, Jaymes Vaughan has always offered something rare: sincerity. Not just in what he says, but in how he lives. For those who've ever felt unseen, unheard, or misunderstood, Jaymes is a reminder that sometimes the most radical thing you can do is simply be real. Adam Lambert. The moment he stepped onto that stage, eyeliner smudged, voice soaring, and confidence blazing, the world knew something had shifted. Adam Lambert wasn't just another contestant on a reality show, he was a force, an energy too electric to be ignored. With every high note and every bold outfit, he challenged a system that had long played it safe. He didn't ask if the world was ready, he decided it was, and in doing so, he lit the path for those still too afraid to walk it. But behind the glam and the fire was a boy who once had to dim his own light just to get by. Growing up, Adam didn't have icons who looked or loved like him. He had music, Queen, Bowie, Madonna, and dreams too loud to silence. So when the spotlight finally found him, he used it with purpose. Coming out at the height of mainstream fame wasn't part of a publicity plan. It was survival through truth. And truth became his trademark. Even when critics tried to box him in, Adam broke through. With glitter, grit, and zero apologies. He didn't tone it down to stay palatable. He cranked it up. Arena tours, chart-topping albums, groundbreaking performances, it was all infused with his unapologetic queerness. He wasn't here to blend in. He was here to stand tall, in heels if needed, and show the world what pride looks like in full color. Then came the call that made history. Queen, the legendary band, chose him to fill Freddie Mercury's shoes. Not to copy, but to reimagine, and Adam delivered with reverence, style, and a voice that could tear open the sky. But beyond the glittering stages and sold-out tours, what makes Adam powerful is how deeply he lives his truth. He talks about mental health, identity, and visibility not as causes, but as lived experience. To his fans, he's more than a performer. He's a mirror, a megaphone, a reminder that you can be loud, loving, and entirely yourself, and still command the stage. Adam Lambert didn't just open doors, he kicked them off their hinges, strutted through, and turned the hallway into a runway. And in doing so, he gave permission for millions to shine in their own way too. Vincint. It started with a hum, just a soft, trembling note in the back of his throat as he stood alone in his childhood room, wondering if anyone would ever hear him. That hum became a song, that song became a cry, and that cry turned into a voice that could shake rooms and mend hearts. For Vincint, music wasn't just a gift, it was survival. It was how he found clarity in chaos, how he rewrote the script the world tried to hand him. A queer black boy from Philly, told to shrink, to soften, to disappear. But Vincint never disappeared, he rose. In every lyric he writes, there's a thread of that first hum, fragile, honest, aching to be understood. But don't mistake vulnerability for weakness. His voice is silk over steel. One moment it caresses you, the next it cracks open something buried deep. He doesn't sing about love in abstract terms, he plunges into it. The passion, the heartbreak, the desperation. His breakout project, There Will Be Tears, isn't just an album. It's an emotional reckoning. It dares to say, I've been broken and I'm still here. Louder. But Vincint isn't just here to sing sad ballads and vanish into the smoke. He's luminous, fierce, a force of nature wrapped in sequins, with laughter as sharp as his fashion. On stage, he commands. Off stage, he uplifts. He speaks openly about depression, identity, and the weight of existing in an industry that still sidelines stories like his. And yet, he never bends to fit into narrow definitions. He expands them. Whether he's belting at Pride or dancing through a neon dreamscape, Vincint is a reminder that beauty and pain often live in the same breath. That joy can be defiant. That to be soft is a radical act. He doesn't want to just be heard, he wants to be felt. And once you feel him, you don't forget. Because some artists entertain, others awaken. Vincint does both, with a note that started as a whisper and now echoes like a promise. Firstman. You'd never know how many layers he's wearing, because the first thing he takes off is the mask. Not for show, not for shock, but because Firstman doesn't believe in pretending. He's the kind of artist who enters a room sideways, a little too loud, a little too honest, and somehow always 2 steps ahead of the joke you thought you understood. You laugh, and then you pause. Because somewhere between the absurdity and the punchline, he's told you something real, something sharp, something uncomfortably true. He didn't get here the traditional way. He didn't charm Hollywood with pretty headshots and polished screenplays. He cracked it open from the inside, using Instagram as his stage and satire as his sledgehammer. His viral impressions weren't just internet fluff, they were emotional X-rays, exposing the absurd expectations we place on ourselves, on each other, on queerness. He wasn't mocking, he was excavating. Every character, every exaggerated wink, pulled back the curtain on how bizarre and painful it is just to exist sometimes. But Jordan's not just a comic mind, he's a builder of worlds, a queer storyteller who doesn't limit himself to genre or tone. His debut music project, Secrets, is equal parts performance art and soul diary, a theatrical, confessional swirl of vulnerability, ego, and romantic disaster. It's messy, intense, brilliant. And it refuses to be boxed in, just like him. He talks about heartbreak with the same energy he talks about pop culture. He names his demons and dares you to name yours too. He's strange, sexy, sincere. He doesn't want to be liked. He wants to be seen. And somehow, in all the chaos, he makes people feel less alone. Because Firstman isn't here to play a role. He's here to ask the question, what happens when we stop performing and start telling the truth? Even when it's ugly, even when it's hilarious. Lil Nas X. There's a boy in glittered boots standing in front of millions, daring the world to watch him shine, and you can't look away. Not because he's loud, not because he's flamboyant, but because he is free. Lil Nas X isn't just a pop star. He's a living, breathing act of rebellion wrapped in rhinestones. Every move he makes dares tradition to blink first, and every time, tradition loses. He didn't grow up knowing there was a place for someone like him in music. He created one. From humble beginnings in Georgia, alone with a laptop and an internet connection, he didn't chase the spotlight. He engineered it. Old Town Road was the opening shot, catchy and unshakable. But behind the viral dance and cowboy hat was a genius move, sneaking a queer black teenager into every living room in America through the most unexpected genre imaginable. And then he dropped the mask. Coming out at the height of his fame wasn't calculated. It was courageous, and instead of dimming the light, he turned it all the way up. With songs like Montero, he gave the middle finger to shame. With videos that blended fantasy and queerness into mainstream spectacle, he made sure people not only heard his truth, they had to see it, and talk about it, and argue about it, and finally, accept that the future had arrived wearing leather and wings. But it's not all fire and flare. Underneath the spectacle is a boy who knows pain, who remembers hiding, who's used laughter and visuals not just to entertain, but to survive. He's spoken about anxiety, about loneliness, about the strange dissonance between being worshipped and still feeling invisible. And he transforms all of that into art, bold, brash, and blisteringly honest. Lil Nas X is not asking for a seat at the table. He's building a new one, with glitter glue and gold chains. And for every kid who's ever felt like they had to tone themselves down just to be loved, he's the proof that being too much might be exactly enough. Ben Platt. There's a certain stillness in his voice, not silence but softness, like the quiet after a storm, the kind that lets you breathe, lets you feel everything you've been trying not to. Ben Platt doesn't demand your attention. He earns it, gently, with a trembling lyric, a glance toward the floor, a breath-taken mid-note that feels like a confession. His power lies in the way he lets himself be seen, even when it hurts. From the moment he stepped into the spotlight as the anxious, isolated teen in Dear Evan Hansen, audiences recognized something deeper than acting. It was as if he wasn't playing the character. He was bleeding with him. That vulnerability became his trademark, his language. And as his career expanded into film, television, and music, he never lost that unguarded edge. Ben doesn't perform emotion. He opens it. But behind the soft demeanor is steel. Coming out in an industry that often prizes masculinity in rigid forms, Ben chose honesty over image. He didn't hide behind characters or coded lyrics. He sang about him, loving men, hurting, hoping. And in doing so, he gave space to others who felt too fragile to speak. His debut album wasn't just an artistic risk, it was a personal reckoning. And that's what makes his music different. It's not curated, it's lived. Even in his moments of joy, there's a trembling truth to his delivery, as if he knows happiness is fleeting. And that's what makes it beautiful. He doesn't rush through his songs, he lets the silence linger, lets every word sink in. And when he sings about love, it isn't fireworks, it's flickering candlelight. Honest, intimate, and sacred. Ben Platt isn't here to dazzle, he's here to connect, to remind us that it's okay to feel deeply, to cry in the front row, to not always be okay. And in a world addicted to noise and performance, that kind of honesty isn't just refreshing, it's revolutionary. He sings the kind of songs you don't just hear, you hold on to, quietly, tightly, like a hand you never want to let go of. Troye Sivan, there's something about the way he looks into the camera, calm, unhurried, as if he knows you've already been holding your breath. Troye Sivan doesn't rush. He lets the silence do the talking, lets the tension linger. His voice never strains to reach you, it floats, settles, and stays. That restraint is his strength. He doesn't need volume to be heard. He needs only a truth, softly spoken. From a YouTube teen with a gentle voice and nervous smile to a global pop icon, Troye's journey has never followed the typical arc of celebrity. He came out publicly at just 18, not as a press stunt or statement, but as a gift to anyone who needed it. There was no scandal, no shock, just honesty. And that set the tone for everything that followed. His art isn't about demanding space. It's about filling it with softness, with clarity, with quiet power. Albums like Blue Neighborhood and Bloom aren't just collections of songs, they're emotional time capsules. Queer longing, first heartbreaks, moments of desire that feel both universal and deeply personal. He doesn't just sing about love, he lets you stand inside it. The rush, the ache, the beauty of being young and unsure and open. His lyrics don't ask to be decoded, they invite you in. And once inside, you don't want to leave. But Troye isn't just a boy with dreamy vocals and good bone structure. He's an artist who knows how to shape atmosphere. His visuals, his fashion, his performances, everything works together to create a world that feels fragile and futuristic all at once. He embraces femininity, queerness, intimacy, and doesn't care if it makes you uncomfortable. That's not his burden to carry. He's too busy being honest. What makes him powerful isn't how loud he speaks, but how much you feel when he does. Troye Sivan doesn't scream his truth, he whispers it, and somehow it echoes louder than most. And in that quiet revolution, he reminds us that there's strength in softness, that beauty can be bold without being brash, that sometimes the most unforgettable stories are the ones told in a whisper, with your heart wide open. Khalid. Sometimes the quiet ones carry the heaviest truths. Khalid doesn't need to command attention. He earns it with honesty, humility, and a voice that feels like a warm night drive with the windows down. His songs don't chase the spotlight. They glow, soft, steady, real. There's a groundedness to everything he does, a sense that even in fame, he's still the kid from El Paso just trying to make sense of love, loneliness, and life. He first broke through with Location, a song so laid back it almost whispered its way onto the charts. But beneath its chill surface was a deeper yearning for connection, for clarity, for someone to simply show up. That yearning became the heartbeat of his sound. While others sprinted toward fame, Khalid strolled with purpose. He let the music speak without theatrics, and the world leaned in to listen. But behind the smooth hooks and radio-friendly melodies, there's a soul that's been through the fire. Being young, black, and queer in the spotlight isn't a gentle path. And while Khalid didn't wear his identity as a brand, he never hid from it either. When he came out, it wasn't a performance, it was a release. A moment of quiet truth that rippled across his fan base with unexpected power. Because that's how he moves. Not with explosions, but with earthquakes you don't feel until everything's already shifted. He sings about the ache of growing up, the tension between craving love and fearing vulnerability, the strange contradiction of feeling alone while being admired. There's a melancholy to his voice, like someone who's seen too much too soon, but still believes in the softness of connection. And that makes him not just relatable, but necessary. Khalid closes this story not with a bang, but with a breath. A reminder that queerness doesn't have to be loud to be valid, that strength can sound like a whisper, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is simply, "This is who I am." No spectacle, no pretense, just truth, and a melody that lingers long after the music fades. These weren't just stories about music. They were stories about truth, courage, and the power of showing up exactly as you are. Which of these voices hit you the hardest? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if this video moved you, subscribe, share it with someone who needs it, and stick around. There's more to come. Until next time, stay loud, stay proud.